What could actually crash the Florida housing market? That's what we're going to talk about today in this video. I'm going to address 7 points, 7 things that you really need to be able to wrap your head around because they may, in fact, crush the housing market here in Florida. Now, if you're new to my channel, my name is Katrin.pfitzenreiter. I'm a real estate agent in Sarasota, Venice, Bradenton, and Lakewood Ranch. Do me a favor, like this video, does help out the video's performance. And without further ado, we're going to get right into this video. First off, what I wanted to talk about is the current Florida housing market landscape. There's a lot of great information on YouTube. YouTubers are really trying hard to give you the most accurate information, the best they know it. But there's also certainly lots of misleading videos, especially if you go back the last 2 or 3 years. Lots of YouTubers out there that have been crying wolf, saying that the Florida housing market has crashed, and that is just not true. Prices are holding steady. If anything is way down, it's a number of transactions, right? So we have less homes that are being sold, mainly because there's a supply issue. And that's because most people in the United States that have a mortgage have a really good mortgage interest rate. Let's look at some stats here. So 82% have a mortgage interest rate that's below 5%. That's across the United States. 62% have a mortgage interest rate that is below 4%. The mortgage interest rates right now are just around 7%. Why would these people who have a really good mortgage interest rate sell their home and then repurchase at a much higher price? And we've seen how the mortgage interest rate really impacts the affordability of purchasing real estate property. And so that's the crash that we're seeing. It's a transaction crash if we say there's a crash. But absolutely, the median price is holding strong. It has not crashed. We still have enough demand for the number of homes that are on the market. Let's look at what the median price is as of June of this year. And we're going to compare it to the same time last year, mainly because of seasonality, right? So we always want to see how it changes year over year, besides kind of understanding what the month over month trend is. And so as of June here in Florida, the median price came in at $420, which is the same as it was same time last year. So essentially this summer, the median price is flat versus same time last year. I actually think that the performance this year, especially into the summer, is super strong because last year there was this massive rush in Q1 and Q2 to purchase a home because most people knew that the mortgage interest rates were just about to increase and prices really jumped in the first half of 2022. And that's really surprising to me because the affordability of purchasing a house these days is far less than it was last year. Now, one aspect of Florida, and one of the reasons why demand is here for Florida living still, is that the unemployment rate is actually really low. It's 2.6% as of June of this year. And so the job market is pretty strong. As a matter of fact, there's more jobs in Florida now than there is anywhere in the United States, and that actually includes New York. Just to put this in perspective, Florida gained about 300,000 jobs since June of last year, which is a 3.4% job increase. Now, remote job opportunities has really opened up a lot of opportunities for especially the younger workers to move down here to Florida, avoid state income tax in a lot of cases, be in a warm climate year-round, and in many cases it's also more affordable to live here depending on where they're moving from. So Florida's economy is doing really well. Florida has also led the US when it comes to new business creation. As of 2020, about 1.7 million new businesses were started, which is an incredible achievement. The leading industries here in Florida is healthcare, technology, finance, construction, and then of course tourism. So right now there's no indication that Florida's housing market is going to be crashing anytime soon. But what if that all changes? So let's talk about what could actually impact or crush the housing market here in Florida. Number one, it's the labor market. So what you need to know is that as of July 1st, there's a new immigration law that was signed into action, and that's the SB 1718 law. And it essentially prevents and even penalizes those people who are hiring illegal workers, undocumented workers in the state of Florida. What you also need to know is that about 8% of those, so the population here in Florida that live here, are undocumented workers, many of which have helped in construction and other markets here in Florida. And so the big question is, who's going to fill those shoes. And this most likely will cause a labor shortage in certain sectors, such as construction. We already have a labor shortage in construction here in Florida. And so employers who are looking to get employees to fill those shoes are most likely going to have to increase their wages. And if the wages are increased, the cost will probably be passed on to the consumer, to us, by higher prices for certain products and services. If certain products and services are going to get even more expensive, when the affordability to live here in Florida is at a historical low, with increasing home prices, increasing homeowners insurance prices, if there's people leaving Florida, if there's less people moving into Florida, and you got supply here, demand here, but now demand is diminishing, right? But supply is right here. Less people are competing for a specific home. The prices are also going to come down. Number 2 is migration to Florida. So since COVID, Florida was the #1 state that people moved to. But the rate of moving to Florida, that's going to slow in the future. Just to put things in perspective in terms of population growth, if we go back to 1946, there were about 2.4 million people that lived in Florida. And as of 2022, there's approximately 22 million people that now live here in Florida. And the projection for 2032 is that the population is going to reach approximately 25 million people. Now, the slowdown in population is going to be mainly due to the deaths that are going to be outpacing birth. But there's also going to be less people that are going to be moving to Florida. Now, a lot of baby boomers during COVID, since COVID, have retired, many of which have moved down to Florida. And there's still a big portion of baby boomers that are going to be retiring in the future. Let's define what a baby boomer is. They were born between 1946 and 1964. And the oldest are now about 77 years old, where the youngest is 59 years old. Now, on average, people are retiring anywhere from 65 to maybe 70 years old. So you can see that there's still a big portion of baby boomers that have not yet reached the retirement age. But once they're retiring, with affordability being at an all-time low here in Florida and increasing costs, such as in the home insurance market world, they want to continue to come to Florida, or are they maybe looking at other places such as Georgia or Texas or South Carolina, North Carolina? So here's an interesting fact. Most people that left Florida, and again, more people actually moved into Florida, less moved out, but of those people who decided to go somewhere else, the majority of them moved to Georgia, neighboring Georgia. But here's also something interesting. I'm going to show you the top 10 states for migration to Florida. So where did people actually move from that moved to Florida? #1 state being New York. Not surprising, right? It's just much more affordable to live in Florida versus New York, especially the Big Apple. But #2 is Georgia. So the #2 place that sent people to Florida is Georgia, even though the #1 place that people moved to was also Georgia. That was interesting to me. And then there is California, #3, and followed by New Jersey. With baby boomers retiring over the next few years, will that cause additional pressure on the job market? Because right now the job market is tight, and a lot of baby boomers held pretty good jobs, high-paying jobs. And so if they're leaving in order to bring in talent in a tight job market already, employers are going to have to get pretty creative here. And that also means spending more money on wages. And if employees are getting better paying jobs, that may prevent them from actually wanting to move to Florida. So then the question is, will this slow down migration of younger workers to Florida? And so there's less demand for Florida living. There's going to be less demand for the homes that are on the market. That could push prices down in the future. #5 is affordability. Things have gotten really expensive since COVID, driven by inflation, supply issue, labor issue. Now, here in Florida, some of it seems to be a little bit more drastic, especially when we look at the housing prices. In some areas, they've literally doubled since 2020, where before, Florida was seen as a very affordable place to purchase a piece of property. It really isn't so affordable anymore. Before COVID, the median price in Florida hovered right below the U.S. average, and now it's kind of on par with the U.S. average. And so for those people that are looking to move here for a more affordable lifestyle, so they may actually think about it twice. And perhaps now all of a sudden, places such as South Carolina, Georgia seem more alluring to them. And that's especially true because of our homeowners insurance crisis that we're dealing right now. Homeowners insurance has literally doubled, in some cases tripled, over the last 2 years. And every time there's a hurricane that comes through, prices will likely go up because we all pay into what happens here in Florida. It doesn't matter if your house is in Miami and the hurricane hit on the other side. Hurricane hit, it created a lot of damage. We all pay into it, right? Because insurance companies have to cover their costs. Supply and labor issues have also increased the cost of renovating a home right now here in Florida. And that's discouraging, especially when the homeowners insurance market is going through a crisis. A lot of insurance carriers are saying, well, we're not going to insure your home if your tile roof is 25 years old or if your shingle roof is 12 years old. Changing a roof is very expensive, and now we got to factor that in. Now, somebody owns a condo or a co-op and it's 3 stories and higher and it's an older building. Now you got to worry about the Surfside bill as well, which basically says that you have to go through a maintenance inspection. You got to make sure that there's enough money in the reserve to ensure that any repair needs, you got the money to pull from, right? And so a lot of older buildings are being charged with high assessments. The HOA fees have really increased in a lot of cases. It's these types of things that are making the affordability of owning a home a lot less attractive than they were maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And so if affordability is already an issue, if you're already stretched, then Florida or certain parts of Florida may not be the best option anymore. Number 6 is hurricanes, flooding. Will that prevent people from wanting to move here? Will more people want to leave Florida? Right now, since Hurricane Ian, I believe that the majority of the people who lived here actually stayed in Florida. And right now, from what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, people are still wanting to move to Florida. They might just become more cognizant of the flood zone. So a lot of buyers are asking me about flood zone X. They don't want to be in AE, and they also want to be away from the shore. What will happen in the future if we're hit with, say, another hurricane? What if we get another bad one this year? What if we get another bad one next year, and it just becomes a yearly occasion where we get major hurricanes that brush through Florida? Will people then say, you know what, this is it. I'm not taking the chance anymore. I'm going so far away from Florida where I won't have to deal with hurricanes. And then lastly is sea level rising. This is absolutely not a political pitch at all. There is some talk that the sea levels are rising, whether you believe it or not. There's probably going to be a lot more conversation around sea level rising across the United States, especially here in Florida. I've checked some maps that actually illustrate what would happen 10, 20, 30 years. It's their simulation, but these maps
differ greatly.
And so right now, I don't believe that a lot of people are taking it serious, but what if there's more media attention put on that? What if there's stronger evidence that the sea level is rising? What if we have more flooding that occurs every year in Florida? Not only are people going to be worried about moving to Florida, but it's also going to have an effect on homeowners insurance, of course, possibly the types of mortgages that can be given. I think there's more to come when it comes to sea level rising and just weather patterns changing and how it's affecting Florida. Now, I want to reiterate that there's no market crash predicted here in Florida by major economists. So this video was highlighting 7 points, 7 challenges that could pose a risk on the housing market here in Florida, theoretically speaking. There's really nothing right now that's deterring me from wanting to live here. I absolutely love living in Florida. I'm in Sarasota. You can't beat the sun, the beautiful beaches, miles and miles of beaches that we have, no state income tax, warm weather year round. There are way more expensive states across the United States. And yes, there's also way more affordable places across the United States. And so to me, it comes down to location, where you're happiest. And if it's Florida, just make sure that if you decide to move here, that you can deal with the pros and cons. Now, if you're interested in real estate in the area I work with, call me, email me anytime. If you have any questions, just reach out anytime. And thank you so much for watching today. I truly appreciate it. Thank you.